In a 2023 survey, 46% of pastors under the age of 45 want to quit. The four main factors for them wanting to quit are schedule, stress, conflict, and lack of support from their members. If you're feeling these four types of stress, then you're probably feeling burned out and not well equipped for your job. So my question is, did your seminary train you and prepare you for this type of work? So we're going to do a deep dive and look at the four main factors that cause 46% of pastors under the age of 45 to want to quit. The overarching theme that I want you to think about as we're discussing these four factors is the ability to lean into something and the ability to people. And I don't mean people as an object, I mean people as a verb. The ability to do people, the ability to relate to people and manage people. This is going to be a big factor in your success. The first part of running your schedule is finding out what works for you. You're going to need a schedule that revolves around four things. First, your office hours. Second, your organization hours, where you're going to deal with the ins and outs, nuts and bolts, day-to-day operation of your church. The third thing is your sermon time. That is probably the most important thing that you need to prioritize, and that's probably why your church hired you, is because they want you to preach good sermons. So you have to hold that time sacred so that it's not disrupted and not taken up with other things, because running an organization, especially a church, with people just dropping by to say hi or talk to you or call you on the phone, if that time is not protected, it's going to be stolen. I guarantee it. There's nothing you can do about it. So you have to be able to protect that time so that you are effective in what you're doing. The fourth thing is your personal and family time. So you've got to manage, okay, I've got organization time, I've got office hours time, I've got sermon time, but then I need me time and family time and maybe kids time and whatever that is. And you have to delineate where those times start and stop. Because as the pastor of a church or any faith organization, unless you set good boundaries, people will assume that you have none. And I've seen that happen time and time again, where, oh, you know what, it's 7:30 at night, I'm just going to call the pastor, he doesn't have anything going on. Right. No, pastor has a family, or pastor has his own things to do, just like everybody else. So establishing good lines of communication with your congregation, what that looks like coming to you and flowing from you as well, helps them understand the best way that they can communicate with you, but also establishes like, hey, you're a person and you don't like live at the church. You know, remember when you were a kid and you thought your teachers slept at school? Yeah. Pastors don't sleep at church. They actually have their own lives that they have to maintain and do. So make sure you have good boundaries that you can delineate and that you communicate that to your congregation as well, because they need to know that. Whether they want to or not, they need to know that so that you can effectively communicate with them and they can also effectively receive communication from you as their leader. Leadership is key in this. It doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be something where you're like, oh, don't call me during these times. No, you just set it up and say, hey, the best ways to communicate with me are during office hours. These office hours are 10 to 2, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are times that I'm in the office. I'm available for phone calls. I'll respond to my emails. If you stop by and I'm not busy, I can talk to you then. But also communicating to them that your sermon time is sacred time. That time is precious. That time is not to be disturbed. They will respect that. And they will respect that because they benefit from that time. So if they understand like, hey, sermon time, that's non-negotiable time. This is time when I need to be preparing for the sermon. I need to be in the Word and studying and managing that time well. They'll respect that. And if they don't, you just need to gently remind them, hey, I'm sorry. I can't talk to you right now. This is my time when I'm focusing on the sermon for the week, and that is really, really important. They should respect that, and most people will. So just be open and honest with them about that. And then, obviously, as a pastor of a church, you're going to have emergencies that pop up. Sometimes giving people an emergency like out card is cool. Like, hey, you know what? If there's like somebody falls out of a tree, that's funny because I did that one time. Somebody falls out of a tree. hey, okay, that's a time you can call me at 7:30 at night. That's an emergency. I understand that. But those will be few and far between. So again, establishing good boundaries for your people to understand. Now, the mindset that you want to have when you're thinking about your schedule is getting ahead of issues. You don't want to be bombarded with things and then have to like fight and be overwhelmed by things. You want to be able to get ahead of things, establish a schedule, communicate that to people so that there's no playing catch up. You've already got that in place and it runs smoothly. Stay organized. That's another thing. Stay organized because your organization is key to the organization running smoothly. Have a plan, stay organized, and manage your schedule. The second factor is stress. This is something that you can't get away from, and your body doesn't actually know the difference between good stress and bad stress. So, being able to have a group of people who you can go to relieve some of that stress. So, if we think about the biblical example of Jesus had 12 disciples, and then within those 12 disciples, he had 2 or 3 that were really, really close to him. Pastors need to have the same group of people around them. So, pastors, I want you to think about your elders and your consistory. Those are people who are going to be involved in the inner workings of your church and also should be able to have your back in just about any situation. Lean on them, rely on them. Find a few that are really, really trustworthy that you connect with because they can help you relieve stress. Now, on the flip side of that, you're also going to have personal stress, and well, I hate to break it to you, but that's life. You're just going to have to deal with that. But in the same vein, having a group, a small group of people who you really connect with, who can help you navigate your personal stresses. These don't have to be church members. They don't have to be from the consistory. They can be people completely outside of the church organization altogether. But having that small group of people to help you navigate your personal stress will also benefit your professional life as well. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but it is immensely important that you manage your stress because, again, that's one of the top factors in 46% of pastors under the age of 45 wanting to quit their jobs. I don't know, that's crazy to me, but stress kills. And if you haven't seen that in your life, you likely will at some point. The final thing I want to talk about is stress, is the ability to shed and take that off. I was in a position earlier on in my career where I was under an immense amount of stress. And one of the things that I was able to do is compartmentalize that stress. So I was under a huge amount of stress while I was at work. And then when I came home, I literally, in the garage, would kind of go through this mental thing where I would just take off a coat, so to speak. Where if my stress was on me like a big heavy coat, I would shed that in the garage, take a deep breath, walk in the house, and then see my wife and my daughters. The ability to compartmentalize that was huge for them so that they didn't feel that. Because when you're stressed, other people are going to notice that, especially people who are close to you and care about you. And you want to be able to be present for them and not have them feel the stress that has nothing to do with them. So, of course, my wife was able to see my stress and feel my stress, and she knew what was going on. But the part where I just shed that and said, okay, and I need to let this go, she would look at me and be like, hey, are you okay? I'm like, yep, I just got to let this go for a minute. And she would understand that. And then when my kids came up and we wanted to, play games or have fun with daddy or whatever that was a time where they didn't know I was under stress because I was able to take that off and just compartmentalize that. Now, the mindset behind dealing with stress is compartmentalizing. Sometimes, a lot of times, that's a good thing, and a lot of times it's a bad thing if you compartmentalize too much, because then you just put things away and then you don't deal with them. Dealing with stress, sometimes, and you've heard me say this in other videos, you have to call the baby ugly. Sometimes you just have to get in the sandbox and get sandy and just deal with the situation and get a little messy with it. Compartmentalizing allows you to shed that so that you're at home and present with your family, but also where sometimes you have to pick that back up and deal with it. So, if you're in one of these situations where you're not able to deal with your stress, find people who are within your organization that you can talk with about your stress that can help you navigate this, And you don't have to do it all by yourself. That's what you have people in place for. When you're at home, same thing. Maybe your spouse is someone that you can really lean into and really rely on to help you relieve that stress. Maybe it's a good friend. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a cousin, whoever it is. But don't bottle that up. You do need to put things in a compartment for a time, but that compartment has to have a door where you open that door and close that door. And sometimes you have to pull that thing out of that door and just set it on the table in front of you and deal with it. So again, don't let stress kill you, kill your drive, kill your confidence for your job. You were called to that job for a purpose. God has you in that place for a purpose. Don't let mismanagement of stress ruin that. The third factor that pastors have to deal with is conflict and internal conflict within the organization. So maybe two people can't agree on what color the paint for the nursery needs to be. Or let me see if some of these sound familiar. Hey, Pastor, the music was too loud this week. Pastor, the music was too soft. I couldn't really hear it. Can you turn your microphone up? Hey, can you turn your microphone down? You're a little bit loud. Can we play that kind of music in church? It doesn't sound like the music I grew up with. Oh my gosh, I love that music. Oh, I can't wait till next Sunday. I hope we have more music like that. Oh my gosh, it's hot in here. What's the thermostat set at? Oh my goodness, it's awfully cold in here. Do you think we could turn the heat up? These are things that if you're in church work, you've heard all of those already. But these are things that pastors get on a weekly basis. And sometimes pastors get that stuff as they are walking towards the sanctuary to deliver their sermon. And now they've got that on their minds. That's a distraction. And the congregation, again, needs to be communicated with like, hey, if you have an issue that's come up, maybe right before the service isn't the best time to talk to the pastor about that. One thing that I've helped institute in the church is having an information officer. An information officer is a great role for somebody who can do people well. And the role of the information officer is to take that load off of the pastor. So instead of all the complaints going to the pastor, you have a meeting and you tell the congregation, no, if you have issues or you have complaints or something that you feel needs to be addressed, go see this person because they're the information officer and they will disseminate that information wherever it needs to go and help you find a solution for it. So the mindset that I want you to have when you're dealing with internal conflict within your church is perception versus perspective. Now, I've heard this phrase before, perception is reality. No, it's not. Perception may be your reality, but that is individualized to you and you alone on planet Earth. What I want you to have is perspective. Perspective allows you to step back and look at things from two different sides. Now, this can be hard to do, especially when you're talking about the emotions of church work or disagreeing with another person or having a disagreement within an organization because, well, you're emotional and you're angry and you have an opinion and you think you're right. Well, let's take a step back and have perspective because perception is individualized to one person, but perspective can be a bit broader and help you see other sides to an issue. So I'm going to refer back to the previous segment that we just completed and talk about sometimes when you're dealing with conflict, you have to just get into the sandbox and get dirty. You have to have those messy conversations. Now, this goes back to being able to people well and have conversations. Are you able to emotionally restrain or detach yourself where you can look at somebody else's perspective? That's a hard thing to do if you're not used to doing it. And my guess is your seminary did not prepare you for dealing with things like this. It's something that comes with time, conflict, and pain. After you've been through these things, you start to navigate them a bit better. Now, how do you gain perspective? Gaining perspective is as simple as just looking at it from somebody else's side. Now, that sounds simple, but when you have emotion involved, it's going to be very, very difficult because you think you're right, or you know what? I like that music, and that's the direction I want the church to go. Well, is that going to be good for the congregation? And I know as a pastor, you're already thinking, man, I really need to keep the will of the congregation and the needs of the congregation above all else. Well, if we're talking about leadership, and as a pastor, leadership is always at the forefront of the conversation, is that a place that the congregation can stay? Or would it be healthy for the congregation to be moved and pushed a little bit? And I don't mean going from traditional hymns to upbeat drums and guitars all the time. But is there growth that you can lead the congregation through incrementally? And I don't mean going 90-degree direction all at once, but just 1 or 2 degrees maybe every month. And expose them to things that they may not have been exposed to before. So let's recap this a little bit. Your mindset is lean into these things. I know when you have a conflict, it's time to, you feel like it's time to just back up and kind of, just restrain yourself. But if there's a conflict, that means that somebody is out of line or needs leadership. So lean into that. And I literally mean lean in. Think about leaning into that so people know that you are engaged and that you're serious. And then think about perception versus perspective. Can we see things from different perspectives? And being able to manage conflict and people well is a huge part of that. Now, maybe you're an introvert and you got into church work because you love to study the Bible and you love that alone time where you can just be in the Word, and now all of a sudden you're in charge of 200-300 people. That's tough. That's really, really tough. So think about this. Is this the right role for you? And maybe it is, but maybe you need somebody to help you along with that. Maybe you need somebody who can help you people. That's where an information officer can really be a godsend to an organization. The fourth factor for pastors being stressed, burned out, and wanting to quit is lack of member support. Now this one can get emotional because you don't know why you're not receiving support. So again, this is the ability to lean in people and have those hard conversations, but have them objectively and unemotionally, where we compartmentalize and maybe put our emotions away for a little bit and just say, you know what, I know this is going to have some negative things about me in it, but I need to figure this out because these people are relying on me to shepherd them and lead them. So let's talk about it. Why do your members not support you? Do you know? That's the first place to start. Do they not support you because maybe you implemented some changes quickly and they weren't ready for that? I have a previous video that talks about implementing organizational change, and there is a right way and a definite wrong way to do that. If you do it the right way, it's really easy if you just follow the steps. But if you do it the wrong way, you can damage and hurt people. And once you hurt people, it's hard to get them back. And it could take a long time. So, again, I'm going to talk about mindset. The mindset is to be objective. Why do I not have member support? What is causing this? Honestly, ask people. I would say start with your elders, then start with your consistory, and have honest conversation. You need this feedback because if you do not have the support of your congregation, how are you supposed to lead them, minister to them, and move them in a direction that is healthy for them? You can't. So you've got to get that figured out first. The next thing is be flexible. Do you want to be the rock or do you want to be the water? And oftentimes the rock is stuck standing in one place, but water is easily navigated. So think about that analogy. If you're the rock, you're just stuck in one spot and you're unmoving. But if you're water, you're going to flow around the rock and you're going to be able to navigate situations, get information, and be able to make decisions. Also, I want you to think about this. I talked to a pastor one time who said, when I was a pastor, I thought that being immovable and resolute and never changing my mind was the way to show true leadership. And I could understand in the era that pastor grew up, that was demonstrated a lot. And I understand where they got that, but that's not good leadership. One of the best things you can do to gain the support of people who are following you is to show them that you are flexible and willing to change your mind if that thing is what is best. Now, I've demonstrated this before. I had a plan, I was moving forward, and I presented that plan, and somebody said, well, hey, Todd, what about this? How about we do this, this, and this? And I think that would work better than what you have proposed. You know, no disrespect, but I think this is a better option. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that is a better option. Let's go with that. What did that just do for everybody in the room listening and watching me? That showed leadership, because I was humble enough to scrap my idea and go with something that was better than what I had planned. That is a powerful, powerful thing. Now, not everybody can do that, but if you can have the humility and the vulnerability, and I think behind that is confidence within yourself, to make that turn and accept somebody else's idea in front of others and scrap your own idea, wow, that shows strength, because you're able to assess what is being presented to you and then say, you know what? Yeah, that is better. That's better not just for me, but for everybody. We're doing that. Wow. That's a huge mindset shift. Can you imagine if you were in a room and somebody presented an idea and you were like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And then somebody else presented a better idea, and the leader, who has kind of the right and the authority to scrap all ideas and go with their own, says, you know what? That is a good idea. We're going to do that instead. What do you think about that leader now? What do your people think about you if you do that? That is power, because leadership is not necessarily being resolute and strong and doing the thing that you think is best. Leadership is doing the thing that is best for the organization and the people. And sometimes it's not your idea, and you have to be okay with that. You still can have the confidence to lead the people using somebody else's idea. And as you get better at leadership, you'll realize, yeah, you have a lot of smart people at your disposal. Use them, because they will make your job easier. I was listening to a pastor preach a sermon one time about when he was a young boy. He lived in a farming community, and one of the jobs that he had in the summer was going out to the farmers and picking rocks out of their field. And he said he absolutely hated that, because he had to bend over, pick up these rocks, put them in the tractor, and it was just back-breaking work. But what did that job prepare the farmer for? It prepared the farmer for planting. So think about people at your church, in your organization, who can pick rocks for you. This is something that I have helped consistories talk about and implement in their churches, because this is a huge thing. If you have a bunch of people doing a bunch of jobs, you're not doing them. You see where I'm going with this? Pastors are not the end-all be-all at the church. People need to help you do those things. And if you can help train your consistory and your congregation, if everybody does one thing, then nobody's doing everything. Because a lot of people say, oh, the pastor will do it. Oh, the pastor will do it. Yeah, and that gets real old real fast. Let's engage and employ the people around us so that they can pick the rocks, so that you can do the thing that they hired you to do. And that is preach the word and lead the organization. So let's recap the mindset that we have here. We have to be objective. We have to be flexible. We probably have to be humble and vulnerable. But man, does that open up a huge door for leadership. If people see you exhibiting those qualities, think about it. You want to work with and for a leader who is humble, who is flexible, who is willing to take new ideas that aren't their own, that are better than theirs. You could be that person. You could be that leader. Think about that. Be the leader you wish you had. All right, let's recap and finish this up. Every situation is going to be different, and what is right for your church may be wrong for somebody else's church, and vice versa. So I want you to think about these things that we talked about. The 46% of pastors under the age of 45 who want to quit their jobs, that's crazy. But it's fixable. It's fixable. And I'm going to go back to what I said in the previous segment. What if you were the leader that you wished you had growing up, or you wished you had now? Be that person. Be the leader you wish you had. Now, every organization is different and every situation is going to be a little bit different. If you have any questions on how to implement these strategies or just want to talk through something, drop me a comment below or reach out to Todd at peoplefirstcoachingconsulting.com and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about it.